Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Luca. Now, Luca is the latest film from Pixar. Luca is both, I think, what a lot of people are going to consider a simpler Pixar movie. Kind of disregard it. I sort of was thinking about that a lot because it seems like everyone's kind of just going like, well, it's a simpler film. It's not what Soul is and blah, 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 all that stuff. So this director, Enrico Casarosa, which I hope I'm saying his name right, I apologize if I'm not. He grew up in Italy and then moved to New York to actually go to the same college I went to, School of Visual Arts. We separate each other by like 10 years, I think. But I never met him. But he grew up in Italy. And this is to remind himself of his Italian childhood. He has a story by credit. He didn't work on the screenplay, but he's also the director. But what this film is doing more of a European style of animation, which is not exactly what, European, let's say European style of storytelling. The design is more like a Aardman character design. He's very influenced by Federico Fellini, particularly the dream sequences, which work pretty fluidly well with animation, but in Fellini films seems a little more surreal. In this, it seems a little more natural. It shows that he's been working at Pixar for all this time and working in animation, but those Italian influences never went away. And that's in this film. And if you look at most European animation, the stakes are relatively smaller. Like, this is mainly just about two kids who, although they are sea monsters trying to be humans, the main conflict of this film is a bike, endurance race around a small town in Italy. And this film costs like probably $100 million. I don't actually know, but it's still a big Pixar movie. And it shows you, what the stakes for kids can be insanely high, and they will get it. You don't need to have the end of the world at stake. And it can matter to you. And I what I really do like about this film is how much this reminds me of kind of older school storytelling, which I've noticed seems to be something that a lot of people are a little too modern in their thinking about it, because it's very universal in everything it's trying to say. It is very low stakes, and it is intentionally trying to be simpler. This sort of reminds me a lot of Hayao Miyazaki. I know he's very influenced by Studio Ghibli, but this sort of reminds me of Ponyo when that came out, because we were like, oh, he's doing a kids thing again. It felt like this simpler sort of thing. And I know clearly the end credits are insanely influenced by My Neighbor Totoro. He basically does the same thing as the end credits of that film. But that's a wonderful idea for end credits. I wouldn't mind if movies in general just ripped that off. But this is about two there's a bunch of sea creatures, sea monsters, I guess, kids who live under the water. Luca has always been curious about there, and he meets a friend, Alberto, who is a sea monster, but he lives on the surface. And they want to get a Vespa together and create a Vespa and have a Vespa and drive a Vespa around the world. Typical, kids' summer activities. This girl, Julia, learned about this competition. They know if they win the competition, they can get a Vespa, even though it's a shitty one. But in this town, they know that everyone hates sea monsters, and if they find out that they are sea monsters, then they will kill them, despite the fact that they look like humans unless it rains or they get wet, and then they'll look like sea monsters again, which I guess is like how evolution happened. I don't know, but it's a cute little trick, and you kind of accept that part of it, and they have to kind of want to get more involved in human society. Luca is really interested in education and learning about the stars. Alberto likes hanging out with Juliet's dad and like fishing with him. They start discovering like what they like in this town and what human lives can represent for them, and how they can kind of fit into this society, and seeing the pluses of being there versus being under the sea. This story kind of reminds me of when I was a kid, or when I was into comics and so forth. I remember everyone said, oh, well, the X-Men or any other thing represents this, and it can mean this to this group and this to that group. And I think them coming to the land and presenting as human, even though they're sea monsters and all these things, can represent a lot. I think that's good for kids, much like in those things it could just be queer-coded. The director has flat out said it is not. I think you can read into it. I think it's actually like naturally fine reading into it, even if it is not naturally. If you are more interested in that, I would suggest like finding actual LGBTQ plus filmmakers. I don't know his personal life, but he has said that's not what's going on. It's just about two friends and so forth. That's fine, But as a simpler kids film, I think it really soars in what it's trying to say. It's just like a simpler, nice little movie. And it does remind me of Ponyo, where I feel like I've seen it before. I feel like I've seen that director, that studio be stronger. And maybe in the crux of the filmography and ranking, which is dumb with Pixar, because in terms of film history, everyone's always just going to put the first Toy Story, and then like there's a bunch of other movies, so ranking is kind of irrelevant and a little stupid and useless. But I guess, go off. To me, like, that's missing the point of this film, because this is just a simpler, nice film for kids. And my daughter absolutely loves it. She thought it was like almost too intense in some parts. I talked to other kids, parents whose kids love this movie, and they love the messaging and the morals of it, and how the kids really get into it. But it's basically like a tale of two little kids who, I guess they're like 10, 11 or so forth, who decide to kind of go off on their own and learn about Vespas and kind of figuring out their identity. They're at that age where they're figuring out, and like they want to have a Vespa. And even though that's like a really silly goal, like they're not really good. I mean, they might just drive around Italy. I don't think they really understand the world, but that's not like the point of the film. The point of the film is that their friendship is going to take them to new different places. And much like I think in Italian film, like Fellini, it does feel very dreamlike. It does feel very simple in what it's really trying to do. I almost felt like in that point, this is based on the 50s and 60s Italy, which we also had Italian neorealism happening around that time as well. And what was interesting is some elements that they would leave in and some that they wouldn't, which I felt like that kind of more almost stripped down form of storytelling really showcased. In this, like, you don't know what Alberto's what happened to his dad. They just like, you never find that out. You just like, you don't know. Maybe the one guy killed him. Maybe he just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. You don't know. But it's like, it doesn't really matter to the storytellers. And it seemed like very economical in what they're doing, which I have to actually respect a lot more, because I feel like a lot of times, it's funny. I was thinking about this film, and that so many times when I see a kid's film, it has like almost like too many plots. Like it's almost insecure. Like we have to have this like Scoob or like Trolls World Tour or something. We have to have like this huge great evil, and has to have all these things and this ship and like all these like set pieces and things like that. And a studio as big as Pixar doing something like this does remind me of like what Aardman did. Like Shaun the Sheep was maybe one of the best animated films of last year, and when they're really great at what they're doing is just tell kind of a simpler, kind of stripped down story. And I think that's almost ballsier, because you're just like not relying on these action there's not really action sequences in this film. I don't think anyone shoots a gun or anything, but it's also such a personal film, because it is about kid friendship and how much those friendships mean to you, and how much when there's an argument between two friends when you're a kid, how much it represents to you. Like there is one part where the kid looks at the other one and he's revealed to be a sea monster, and he turns on him, and that really hurt. That hurt. I think because I was a kid who like was weirder, and at the second someone could turn on you, they would. That hit me. Not that I was revealed to be a sea monster or gay or anything like that, but that emotion still like kind of sticks with you in a way, and you could sense that there. That felt very real, and their relationship, even with Julia, felt very real. It felt like something between a friendship that happens over a summer, and it felt so natural within that, because I think this director is just like trying to show that turn where you like say, this is maybe what I want to do with my life. It sort of reminds me of the whole idea of a Goofy movie. Like you're like, Max shows like he wants to do this big performance and how he's really good at this thing, and Luca shows that he wants to grow and learn more about the human world and how that excites him, and how he's just excited by all this knowledge and everything like that. It's a really nice little wonderful film. I don't really care where this ranks, and to me, I don't think Soul will actually age as well as we all thought it would. So I actually do think this film will, and I think the way I've seen my daughter react to it, and I think kids react to it, I think we'll be dealing with this film for a lot longer because of what it really represents to kids. It's just a simpler, it's almost like a quiet little story. You don't need to see the whole sea monster world. You don't need the world building. It almost like an older film like just doesn't do it because they didn't have the budget, so like just don't even bother writing that. Now it's a creative choice almost, because Pixar, Disney Pixar, whatever, why aren't they showing a giant sea sculpture thing, but it's like, did I need that in Phantom Menace, and do I need that now? I don't need it. I just need to see them, they're being farmers and things like that. And I think there are lesser Pixars that have simpler stories, but I thought this one was a little better at it, because it probably, much like Bug's Life, which is another Pixar like we constantly forget about, unlike Good Dinosaur, kind of is like not great, not the greatest movie. I don't remember what I said about it. I don't hate it or anything, but A Bug's Life like this is owing itself to legend and storytelling, much like that is Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. This is borrowing from Fellini. This is borrowing even from Pinocchio, the Disney animated film, and the story which it references in the film, which is very Italian, European kind of well-told film, which is interesting. I think one of the things that Disney did as a studio as it went on to, either keep their supremacy or be influenced by other things or what have you, would be influenced by other artists and other animation studios and things like that. Pixar mostly hasn't really done that. They've been very lucky in creating their own worlds and having these big auteurs and stuff. And as we keep talking about, like, well, what is the second wave of Pixar, particularly like Lasseter is gone, Pete Docter's in charge and stuff like that. And I've noticed he's let different kind of character designs and things flourish since he's really been taking hold. And I think, although I'm sure like these films take so long to develop and so forth, that Lasseter had something to do with it at some point, not to, ruin the movie for you. But I do think like Pixar messing with, more Italian European forms of storytelling, having Aardman type of character designs is a definite change for them. And maybe it's a good change to do that, because I think a lot of what made Disney competitive as an animation studio is trying to counter other studios and understand those things. And I think what Pixar did here is just make a very solid, wonderful little kids movie. I mean, that's essentially what this is. I could see traces of it in classic Italian cinema. The only thing, the more I think about it, was like, you could completely not have the thing with the parents. I feel like that's there because Disney films have to have that. It doesn't feel like it, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it doesn't feel like works as well with that kind of storytelling. It's like another plot line. Really, you could have cut that out and just had it be about the kids, and it'd probably be a lot stronger of a movie. It's like either Maya Rudolph or Rashida Jones voices moms in animated films. It's like all the time. Maya Rudolph's been in so many of these things. It's like way less special at this point. And was it Jim Gaffigan? Yeah, okay. I don't really need to see parent representation. I'm a parent all the time. It's like, whatever, you're not interested in me. But that probably could have been cut. It could have just been simpler about them. That might have been a little darker for people, particularly how people feel about parenting now and so forth. They didn't want to deal with like the negative buzz, like the parents didn't care or whatever. But I don't know if that plot line was necessarily needed. It didn't really, there's some fun sequences with it, with the water and the basketball thing. That was kind of cool. But it didn't add as much, because I think the core story and what you remember this is Luca and Alberto and Julia trying to beat like this older kid who keeps winning. Like, that's the thing kids care about too. Like, I remember like caring so much about getting like some trifle little stupid thing that was like not that great when you're an adult, but when you're a kid it represents the whole world. Like, I walked 2 miles to get like phantom rings from, a 7-Eleven, and I don't even have those anymore. And it like was my whole day that day, and it represented so much. And I didn't even see the Phantom till like a year ago. In your kid brain, things make sense like that. And it's nice being a story that respects that and respects their sensibilities. It did remind me of Ponyo in that it is a studio understanding, why don't we just make a simpler, nice little film? And sometimes I think storytellers need that, maybe as a palate cleanser, or maybe to show you the limits and what you can do in a very economical, sweet little story. You don't always have to like change the world or try to change your world or make a big auteur statement. I think maybe one of our biggest problems with Pixar is we demand all these crazy things, and we had a long period, and that was very wonderful. But I'd much rather just have a solid, good film than just have an auteur statement for the sake of it. And I think this is, I still quite liked it. I've actually gotten to see it more than once because my daughter likes it so much. And I think it's a sweet, fine, wonderful little movie that fits within a filmography. When I first saw Ponyo, I thought very much about how it felt like this lesser, kind of simpler animated thing. And when I was older and I've shown it to my daughter and I've watched it a few times, I think I appreciate it more for its subtlety and how closely tight of a story it really is. And I think as time goes on, you kind of appreciate the good stories, the solid stories, the stories that might have meant something to you and scared you and, made you cry and pulled on your heartstrings a little bit. Then you do the ones that were trying to like reinvent the world all the time. There's a time and a place for those things. And I think Luca is the latter, but Luca is a very spectacular version of that. And maybe, it's okay or middling to most people, but I think even within that, it told its story in a really nice way, and I like to see Pixar kind of expand its way and its influences, maybe not with the Ghibli thing, but with Aardman and Federico Fellini. It felt like a story I want to watch 20 times and experience and say Silencio Bruno and things like that. I think that is what I've always liked about this studio and what I like about storytelling, and in that I think Luca is a pretty good story. So if you have seen Luca and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.